50 years ago this morning, a big crowd turned out to welcome President John F. Kennedy to Fort Worth, Texas. The president and Vice President Lyndon Johnson attended a brunch where Jackie Kennedy and her outfit stole the show.
I introduced myself in Paris by saying that I was the man who had accompanied Mrs. Kennedy to Paris. I'm getting that same sensation as I travel around Texas. Nobody wonders what Lyndon and I wear.
Air Force One then flew to Dallas, where another big crowd was waiting at Love Field. The Kennedys climbed into the presidential limousine to begin the motorcade that would lead to a critical moment in history.
President Kennedy's family and friends and colleagues are recalling their happier memories. They reunited Saturday. In a moment, Bob Schieffer will join us from Dealey Plaza in Dallas. But first, he looks at what is being described as a return to Camelot.
Just days ago, at the Washington home of Nancy Dutton, who campaigned for John Kennedy, a unique gathering got underway. A reunion like no other for those who knew, worked with, even loved President Kennedy.
I'm the oldest of all the grandchildren, so I was lucky at least to see what a difference he was making in the country.
Kathleen Kennedy, Bobby's daughter.
Each night we would pray around the bed that Jack would be the best president ever and my father would be the best attorney general ever.
Hardly a day goes by where I don't meet somebody who tells me that my Uncle Jack inspired them.
Teddy Jr., Ted Kennedy's son.
I mean, look at the people around this room. They really believe that the government could do great things. And I think people really miss that now.
Well, I mean, I remember everything about him. I think of him all the time.
For Ben Bradley, the legendary editor of the Washington Post, the day his good friend was assassinated is embedded in memory.
My crowd remembers that day like part of the Bible.
Linda Baines Johnson, whose father...
Time heals wounds. This gathering found the daughters of sworn enemies now at peace. LBJ's daughter Linda and Kathleen Kennedy.
The Kennedys were wonderful friends of ours, and my parents loved President and Mrs. Kennedy.
For these people on this special night, the moment remains real. The dark day in Dallas, their world and ours, changed with a gunshot.
It's sad for me, and it is really sad for the country. There was a lot of loss.
Bob Schieffer's at Dealey Plaza in Dallas. Bob, good morning. Let's begin with your thoughts.
Charlie.
Let's begin with your thoughts as you stand there in this place.
Well, it always kind of takes your breath away when you come back here. I came down to Dallas last week, and the first time I kind of approached the school book depository, which is just over my shoulder there. It's probably too dark to see it now. But it's hard to believe, you know, that all of this happened in one day. I mean, you know, it was this young, vibrant, active president. He got this unbelievably friendly welcome here, and then just in a matter of seconds, it was all over. It's a day that changed America, Charlie.
You know, Bob, the Daily News here in New York has reprinted the paper that they ran the day after his assassination. Incredible to read all the stories. And one of the things that struck me inside the paper was about the Kennedy children, you know, not being told that their father had been assassinating, waiting for until Jackie Kennedy could tell them. It is incredible how many remembrances this day to go back and look at it.
Yeah, and you know, it's the little things like that. How do you tell the children at a time like this? And there are so many of those moments. And yet hanging over this, Nora, was this feeling of no one knew what this meant. We didn't know if it was the beginning of World War III. They had closed off the borders with Mexico. But, you know, you saw this tragedy like we had never seen unfolding before us. Television had never covered something like that, covered this that day. And then hanging over that tragedy we were seeing before our eyes, are we about to go to war? And that was what was so terrifying. It's a day unlike any day that I think anyone who was alive that day had ever experienced. And not until 9/11 did any of us ever feel the same way.
Bob, you were reporting that day and you're reporting this day. How has the legacy of the president changed in these 50 years since that terrible day?
Well, I think the legacy of John Kennedy will always be that he inspired young people, he inspired intellectuals, he inspired people who had not shown much interest in government to come and do something in government. I mean, people really took him at his word when he said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And it just brought a new sense of energy to the country. And the creation of the Peace Corps came about. When you look at John Kennedy's legislative record, it was fairly thin. It would be left at Lyndon Johnson to pass the monumental civil rights bills with the great pieces of legislation of that era. But it was the inspiration that Kennedy brought to the country, I think, and I think really as you look back on it, that will be his legacy.
Bob, thank you so much. On Sunday, Bob Schieffer's guests on Face the Nation include Clint Hill. He was a Secret Service agent seen frantically climbing onto the limousine in the moments after the shooting. That is Sunday morning here on CBS.
Incredible to see that. And where were you, Charlie, on that day?
I remember it well. I was in a car at Duke University, and I pulled up to an intersection, and I heard it on the radio, and I just pulled over. You know, it was a tough day for all of us, especially because you felt the country had new promise, and you felt that there was a sense that we were young and vital. And I think I remember famously what Pat Moynihan said when Mary McGrory had said, we will never laugh again. And Senator Moynihan said, we'll laugh again, but we'll never be young again. Well, I mean, I think we can recapture youth too, but it was a remarkable day and a remarkable time for America.